it's going to take a long, long time to remove those people. So even if we wanted to suddenly remove the red tape and improve the regulatory environment, it's going to take an awful long time because the people that have put it all in place are still there.
How can we unlock growth in South Africa's economy? I posed this question to Toby Chance in a recent episode of my podcast. What follows is a short extract from our longer conversation. If you would like to watch the full discussion with Toby Chance, that's linked in the description below. Enjoy. Right, well, Toby, you mentioned the voice of organized business there, Busi Mavuso. She's been quite a prominent critic of late. She sits on the Eskom board, and she was saying in a recent Scopa parliamentary meeting that Eskom shouldn't be carrying the blame for the ANC's misgovernance failures and the way it's mishandled the Eskom situation over many, many years. But do you think that organized business has been forceful enough in putting forward an alternative policy agenda, in criticizing hostile policies that create this inhibiting business environment that we're seeing?
I would say yes and no. I think that the problem with business is that it needs to take its political blinkers off, if I can put it that way. What I mean by that is that business in this country is very reluctant to enter the political terrain. And there's a good reason for that. And that is that every time they've done it in the past, they have been castigated. Going back to the days of Tony Treyer, over 20 years ago, when he said that South Africa, has political risk attached to it when he was releasing the annual report of Anglo American. And Thabo Mbeki, ripped it to shreds. So there's been a general reluctance on the part of business to engage critically with government. That's not to say that they haven't put forward policies. They do regularly. In fact, when after COVID, they put a very, very comprehensive economic policy document together under BS4, B for South Africa, Business for South Africa, which is a newly formed organization combining BLSA with the Black Business Council. And yet the government has ignored it largely. So, when I first went into Parliament in 2014, in the very first committee meeting, I was the Shadow Minister for Small Business Development. I raised the issue with the Minister, Lindiwe Zulu at the time, of the trust deficit. And she wasn't even aware that there was such a thing. She was so divorced from the business environment that she just denied that there was such a thing as a trust deficit. So there was a huge gap between business and government, which is supposed to have been closed in institutions like NEDLAC. But unfortunately, it just hasn't been the case. So business needs to try harder. I know that people like Neil Froneman from Sibanye-Stillwater has made an attempt. He may be a little bit aggressive on occasions, but business needs to be more forceful in explaining the critical problems that we face, which are not just economic, they are political. And yet, as I said, most business people are either reluctant or incapable of entering the political terrain on any level of sophistication.
Yeah, I mean, I posed a similar question to Songezo Zibi in a recent episode of this podcast. And he said, well, listen, government is only really going to respond if they feel some kind of political pressure to do so, if they feel that there's something to be lost by not engaging. And, perhaps what I would suggest is that business needs to understand that it has institutional power and that can be exercised for leverage. And that doesn't mean that you must be needlessly aggressive. It must just be about having a firm stance and saying, well, these are our interests. These are the constituents that we represent, consumers, our employees, our shareholders, and this is what we want. This policy should not be accepted. I'm thinking EWC, NHI, etc.
I would go further than that, David, and I would say that business is very reluctant to get off the fence in terms of party political affiliation. And if you think of other mature democracies, whether it be America, Britain, Germany, France, you'll see that business essentially is very outspoken in terms of the political positioning that they take. And unfortunately, that's not the case in this country. There's been a stitch-up between big business and the ANC, and big business has been very reluctant to to be critical of the ANC and say, look, we need new political formations or stronger opposition that can not just become opposition or remain as opposition, but can compete as potential governing parties, which means being prepared to say, I support this party or that party, but not the ANC.
Yeah, I'd imagine that many of these businesses have lucrative contracts with the state, or they benefit from regulatory protection, or they have deployed cadres on their boards who try to influence the agenda and decision-making in favor of government.
And that has been one of the winning strategies of the ANC since it became the government in 1994, is that through cadre deployment, they have infiltrated every walk of life, and that includes business. And one of the things that business did in the 1994 settlement was to ingratiate itself with the ANC through the adoption of what became BEE policy, and the transfer of ownership portions of their companies to well-connected ANC cadres.
Yeah, and of course, this policy is dressed up in the language of transformation, empowering Black people. But actually, as we opened this conversation, many millions of Black people are on the margins of the economy. It's only a very small, politically connected elite that really benefits. And any criticism of that is dismissed as racist or anti-transformation.
Yes, I think one of the reasons for this is that if you go back to the 1994 settlement, and this is quite well described by Mcebisi Jonas in his book After Dawn, published a couple of years ago, he described the four main groupings that negotiated that settlement. And they were, in his words, the established elite, the new elite, essentially the former being big businesses, the latter being the ANC. Then there was organized labor, and then there was the unemployed and the poor. And the one important class that was not part of this negotiated settlement was the entrepreneurial class, by which I mean the hundreds of thousands of small businesses that relied upon a growing economy and competitive economy and deregulation to enable them to grow. And essentially that resulted in the economy missing out on huge potential that really has been with us ever since. And I think that the ability of government, labor, and big business to essentially to stitch up the economy has been a major constraint on growth, and that is something which most commentators fail to observe, let alone fail to speak out on. I think it's beginning to change, but when you have someone like Sipho Nkosi, who's the red tape czar that was appointed by President Ramaphosa, hardly even appearing at all. I mean, I don't think anybody's seen him in, on the TV or in any media. You actually wonder, well, is the government serious about improving the lot of the small business owner in this country?
Yeah, I mean, I think an appointment like that is optics. He's obviously a very capable man, but he's operating within an institutional setting that is actively going to be working against him. And you think of this idea of red tape, that it's just this emergent thing that somehow is there, and you just need to cut it, and that will free up business. But no, it's the constraining policies are the consequence of the ideological convictions of the party. It's a feature, not a bug of the system. So until you fix the underlying fundamentals of the policy framework, you're not really going to get rid of things like red tape.
Yeah. And I think an added problem, David, here is that we have to face up to the fact that because government departments in all three spheres of government and state-owned enterprises have now been run, if I can use that term, although they're not being run very well, by hundreds of thousands of deployed cadres, it's going to take a long, long time to remove those people. So even if we wanted to suddenly remove the red tape and improve the regulatory environment, it's going to take an awful long time because the people that have put it all in place are still there. So we either have to change their approach and mindsets, which is going to be difficult, or we have to go through a process of extracting them. You see the problem happening in for example, the city of Johannesburg or Tshwane, where the turnaround time is more than one term of government, more than 5 years, because you have to actually have the right people in place to make those changes. It took the DA at least 5 years since they won Cape Town to actually achieve that. And only after 1 or 2 terms were they able to deliver the results.
Thanks for watching. Please do check out the full interview with Toby Chance. That's linked over here. You can also subscribe to my other channel. That's linked over here. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.